All right, I think we're good there. So we will have some questions at the end, so save your questions for there. But we got one of Colorado's Liberty leaders, the man himself, who's been hosting Liberty on the Rocks with his wife, Kiara, for so many years, doing an incredible job of building this community. We got Liberty Josh here to talk to us about silencing Samourai. All right, come on up. Everybody give Josh a big round of applause.
Hello. What's up, everybody? For anyone who doesn't know me, as Brandon mentioned, I run Liberty on the Rocks. I do a lot of different Liberty-related things. I'm interested in a lot of topics. I'm currently writing a book on the history of crypto anarchy and the cypherpunks, and that's kind of what inspired this particular talk tonight. Just show of hands, how many people actually know what Samourai Wallet is? My ballpark is a third. Okay. Yeah, that's the ballpark. Well, cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming out. I think this is a really interesting and important privacy case. Let me adjust this cord real quick. All right, so we are going to get started. Get right into it. As always, I have a lot of slides, so we're going to go pretty deep on this topic. I will try not to take too long. So, what was Samourai Wallet? Samourai Wallet was an open source, privacy-focused, non-custodial, Bitcoin-only mobile wallet that launched in 2015. It was very privacy-focused. It had a couple of key features: Tor, Whirlpool, Ricochet, and Stowaway. Those are some of the privacy things that they offered. The most notable of those would probably be Whirlpool, which we're going to talk more about. The company was run by two pseudo-anonymous devs. So nobody basically knew who ran the company publicly. If you were in the space, you probably knew who it was, but the two devs didn't reveal their names publicly, and anytime they would speak, they would usually wear masks. So very pseudo-anonymous, a lot of OPSEC. They were raided by the FBI in April of 2024, and the company was taken down. The website was taken down, and they were both arrested. So we're going to kind of get into the prehistory a little bit, and then we'll actually talk about the case and what actually happened in the legal setting. So the Samourai ecosystem, it's a little bit complicated, so it's kind of important to understand how it all works. So these are sort of the three main things other than the wallet itself. I want to read you this quote real quick. This is from an interview with one of the main developers. So he says, that message has gotten diluted as the years have gone on, but at its root, it's a cypherpunk tool, referring to the wallet, to route around the state. It's only useful if we use it that way. So the developers of this software consider themselves to be cypherpunks. If you guys aren't familiar with cypherpunks, those are people that would basically use technology to achieve freedom in a very simple sense. So the three primary things from the ecosystem are Whirlpool. This is a privacy-preserving Chaumian CoinJoin, which basically means it gives you Bitcoin privacy. You put all your Bitcoin into a pool, you mix up the Bitcoin, and it comes out, and people don't know where the Bitcoin comes from. We're going to talk more about it. Sparrow Wallet was the desktop wallet. So Samourai Wallet was a mobile-only wallet, so you could only use it on your phone. That could be difficult with these mixing services. So Sparrow Wallet, which was developed by another developer, created a desktop wallet that would incorporate this mixing service into it. And then this other one, is that bright enough? You guys see that? Okay. And then Ronin Dojo, they were the node partner of Samourai. So if you guys are familiar with Bitcoin, usually you would run a full node, or you can run a light client. Ronin Dojo was the full node implementation of Samourai Wallet that you could connect to, as opposed to connecting to the Samourai servers. And we'll elaborate a bit more on that as well. So we need to understand Whirlpool. Whirlpool is very crucial to this case. So I'm just going to kind of read through this, and we can go into more questions about it later. So with Whirlpool, users always retain custody of their own funds and never received another user's funds. So the money that you put into Whirlpool is your money. You put your money in, you take your money out. It's nobody else's money. The developers, they never touch your money. So that, again, that's critical to the legal framework. Samourai was a light client, meaning it was not a full node. We talked about that a little bit. Now that created a problem with what was known as the XPub, which is your external public key. So if you connected to the Samourai servers without connecting to your own full node, which is a dojo, you would send them your XPub, which would reveal all the transactions you had done. So essentially, the developers of the wallet, they could unwind your transactions, and they knew everything that you had done. So your privacy kind of went away just to the developers because they had a copy of your XPub. So this was kind of a security vulnerability, and this was well known at the time. This was a point of conflict in the community, but there were ways around it. You could run your own dojo node, or you could run Sparrow Wallet, and that would get you around this problem. So only about 15% of the users were not running their own nodes. And the way Whirlpool works, it only gives you privacy to previous transactions, not future transactions. So let's say I run my Bitcoin through Whirlpool. I'm super private now. Nobody knows who it is. The moment I spend it, I buy some pizza, I attach my name to it, boom, all the privacy's gone. From that point forward, they know who I am on the wallet, but they wouldn't know anything previously on the wallet. So again, understanding Whirlpool. I'm just going to kind of read this because it gets very complicated on the back end, and I don't want to misexplain it. So CoinJoin is a simple yet powerful technique that bundles several users' payments into on-chain transaction by mixing inputs and outputs in a single transaction. The link between any particular sender and receiver gets blurred, giving you crypto privacy without needing a third-party custodian. So again, non-custodial privacy service. The mixing protocol was known as Chaumian CoinJoin, named after David Chaum, who created this process in the 80s. A trusted coordinator acts like a blind signature server. Participants send their inputs to the coordinator, who then creates a blinded output request. The coordinator signs the request without ever seeing the link between the original input and the final output address. When the signatures are returned, users unblind them and publish the signed outputs. Because the coordinator never learns the mapping, it cannot link any input to its corresponding output. Again, you may not have gotten a whole lot from that. That's actually a really good technical explanation, but basically it just means you put them in, they don't have custody of your money. When they come out, they're private. That's about as simple as I can make it. And then you see that little graph there. You can kind of see where the two inputs, the 0.12 Bitcoin, the 0.13 Bitcoin go in, and you can't necessarily tell which one they are when they come out. So Samourai Wallet was one of the biggest Bitcoin privacy providers at the time. There were two other main ones. So Wasabi Wallet was probably the biggest. They were simple but compliant. They worked really well, but they were known to scan your transactions and run them against basically a state-approved surveillance list before allowing you to use their privacy service. That came out in 2021, and a lot of people were not happy about it. The other one was called Join Market. Join Market was more decentralized. It was probably more hardcore than Samourai Wallet was, but it was more difficult to use. When it was initially launched, it was only command line. There is a GUI interface, which makes it easier to use, but you also had to provide liquidity, which means you had to put up some of your Bitcoin. You could loan that out, and you could actually profit off of it. You could make fees. So Join Market is considered to be the most hardcore one. Samourai was in the middle, and then Wasabi was sort of more the compliant, state-approved one. So Samourai feuds. So Samourai was a very sort of contentious personality online. And so when I say Samourai, I should clarify, there's two developers. One of them went by the name Samourai. So Keone Rodriguez, whose name was not known prior to this case, he went by Samourai. So almost everything that Samourai said publicly was Keone Rodriguez. And he was very contentious. He was this hardcore voluntarist, anarcho-capitalist cypherpunk who was in people's face all the time on Twitter. So just we're going to go over a few of the feuds they had. Luke Dasher of Ocean Mining over op return censorship. Kind of a complicated niche thing, but Luke Dasher is kind of a crazy person, and they would get into a lot of debates online. If you're familiar with Luke Dasher, he's a character. Regular issues with Bitcoin Mechanic over the XPub issue. So I mentioned earlier where you had to send your information, your XPub, to Samourai Wallet. There was one particular person, Bitcoin Mechanic, who had a big problem with this, and he would repeatedly call the Samourai developers scammers. He called them scammers the day they were arrested and the day Keone went to prison. And he participated in some public debates. So that was a whole thing that got a little bit heated as well. And he also works now for Luke Dasher of Ocean Mining. Another regular beef that they had in the space was with Wasabi Wallet over the privacy concerns with Wasabi Wallet. In at least two cases that I'm aware of, the privacy transactions in Wasabi Wallet got unwound, and people ended up getting in trouble because they were able to trace them through Wasabi Wallet. As far as we know, that has still never happened with Samourai Wallet. And then there's a long-standing beef with Blockstream, which is kind of like the mainstream crypto company. Don't need to get into it too much. So Samourai messaging. So on the right there, you can see this man who looks like a criminal. That is Keone Rodriguez, the primary developer of Samourai Wallet. And this was an interview he gave to Reason Magazine. So he usually appeared this way, wearing a hat, sunglasses, and a bandana. This was what we call OPSEC, operational security. Because he was known as a Bitcoin influencer, essentially, you could get robbed, essentially, when people know you have Bitcoin. So he did this just to be a little bit safer. Even though, he was legally registered, the government knew who he was the whole time. So it wasn't so much protection against the government, it was more protection against other people who might target him for his Bitcoin. Now, we can see some of the messaging here. So these are discount codes for using Whirlpool that he mentioned. So on the left there you see this guy crying. That's Luke Dasher, who I mentioned. And Samourai created this discount code as basically a fuck you to Luke Dasher. Because they would debate all the time on Twitter about all sorts of things. Luke Dasher's company was essentially censoring transactions from Samourai. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's what the debate was about. And then these other ones, see this middle one, 30% off Whirlpool mixing fees for Wasabi refugees. So the Wasabi Wallet people who got compromised, when they learned that they were going to start submitting them to a surveillance company prior, they gave a 30% discount so that all the Wasabi people could come to Whirlpool for cheaper now. And then this one on the right, Let's Go Brandon, 20% off all Whirlpool mixing fees. If you're not familiar with that term, Let's Go Brandon is code for fuck Joe Biden. I assume everyone's familiar, but just in case. Samourai messaging, again, a little bit more. So the 3 of these messages are at Luke Dasher. We don't need to get super into it. But this top left one, which is kind of cringy, but I also kind of love. So Samourai Wallet says, just arrived into Texas for the Guns and Bitcoin conference on April 10th. We'll be speaking some hard truths on Bitcoin. Will likely make your favorite influencer cry. Don't miss this event. This is Bitcoin as intended, dissident tech, not compliance cuckery. Again, kind of cringy, but I also kind of love it. And then this other one, and these other 3 are all at Luke, which we don't need to get super into. But he says, we will not be bullied by you, your limp-wristed bundle of sticks lawyer, or your gaggle of sycophant employees. Again, little contentious. So a lot of people didn't like Samourai Wallet for this kind of principle take, but also sometimes aggressive take. So if you guys are familiar with Monero, you might be wondering, why not just use Monero? Monero is significantly more private, significantly easier to use. Personally, that's how I feel. I've actually never used any of these Bitcoin coin joins because I've always thought Monero was simpler and more private. So you can see this little graph there. You know, privacy with Bitcoin, you got to run through all these steps, whereas Monero, you just send it. But Samourai Wallet, they address this. This quote here, Monero is closer to our hearts than whatever Bitcoin is turning into today. They then went on to say, but Bitcoin is where the people are. That's where the money is. That's where the action is. We want people to have privacy here. Monero is great. We love it. But what we're doing is privacy for the masses. And then they were also implementing basically a way to pull your change out. So extra Bitcoin that couldn't go through Whirlpool, they were going to filter that out into Monero. So that was a thing they were working on developing, but never actually got implemented into the wallet. And that's what this quote in the top right is about. So a little prehistory. So leading up to the creation of Samourai Wallet, the first Bitcoin coin join or mixer was Amir Taki's Dark Wallet in 2014. This was actually based on a white paper by Greg Maxwell in 2013. Greg Maxwell, longtime Bitcoin coder, he put together this white paper, and they put out actually a bounty for anyone who wanted to create this coin join mixer. I think it was only about $1,000 worth of Bitcoin at the time. Well, Amir said, hey, that sounds awesome. I'm going to do it. He claimed the bounty, and he built Dark Wallet. Now, Dark Wallet was very aggressive in its marketing, even more than Samourai was. So I'm going to show you 2 of their advertising videos for Dark Wallet, because Dark Wallet was the primary inspiration for Samourai Wallet. Keone has said this multiple times on different podcasts, and I still just love the messaging and the way that Cody would articulate it.
Should I call it Drug Market Ultra or Death Market Revived?
Computer science, on the cutting edge. Get involved. Don't just download the latest app. Help design it.
So yeah, that was just a short little one. That was 12 years ago that came out. And then this was their sort of more proper one.
Maybe you thought you'd act differently. Maybe you thought you'd see it coming. But the moment's here. And it's time to make a choice. At its end of empire, the United States imagines the power to regulate the world's first great digital currency, Bitcoin.
It's a cyber currency, so how do we get to it?
To provide a framework for its existence. A technology that questions all previous frameworks, fitted for its straitjacket. Helping the United States is a group of lobbyists and corporations calling themselves the Foundation. Their mission is a performance, to both agree with and maintain an independence from regulatory power. But you can't have it both ways. Unsystem is an international group of activist developers led by Amir Taki. Concerned by the Foundation's centralized development and advocacy, they're developing a crypto wallet that runs on a completely independent software stack. This wallet runs on the backend Libitcoin, the command tools SX, and the Obelisk blockchain server architecture. A thin wallet, the premier version of which will include privacy and security features, trustless mixing, and the foundation of a distributed identity protocol. Help us cover the next 4 months of full-time development. Help us make this implementation a line in the sand.
In terms of the technology. Now we are all being intercepted permanently. This is a state change.
My personal bank accounts were shut down and I was blacklisted from having a personal bank account. It doesn't matter, I was able to use Bitcoin. And now we're hearing stories of people's personal accounts being blocked.
Why are you so dangerous?
They were comfortable operating in that environment because they felt that they enjoyed complete anonymity.
Are you watching? Are you listening? Bitcoin is what they fear it is. A way to leave.
We don't know you,
to
we
forbid.
don't want you, and the sooner you're put out...
To make a choice. There's a system approaching perfection. Just in time for our disappearance. So, let there be dark.
So I don't know. I always get super hyped by that. I think it's awesome. I loved the whole vision that they had. The project didn't last very long. It only lasted about a year. It was kind of in beta, but they were very aggressive with the marketing, as you kind of saw. Stupid YouTube autoplay.
What does it mean to have a Bitcoin?
No.
Many people have heard of Bitcoin.
So yeah, this is a quote from Cody Wilson. It's just money laundering software. I want a private means for black market transactions, whether they, therefore, non-prescribed medical inhalers, MDMA for drug enthusiasts, or weapons. Cody Wilson. So anyways, Cody went on to do all the 3D gun stuff. Amir went to Syria, where he fought in a Syrian uprising, and now he's working on a project called DarkFi, which is closer to this. But this basically was the inspiration for Samourai Wallet. At the time when this came out, this was sort of the only big privacy project, and the two developers of Samourai wanted to focus on that. They saw all the energy was going into Bitcoin scaling, and they wanted to focus on privacy. They launched that. Also, Join Market was launched as a direct result of Dark Wallet no longer being a thing. So that kind of leads us to Operation Choke Point 2.0. I assume people have probably heard of Choke Point 2.0. So Choke Point 1.0 was an official government program under the Obama administration that specifically targeted any sort of potentially illicit activity. So they would go after gun companies, weed companies, any sort of sex work thing, payday loans, anything kind of on the fringes. And these things weren't illegal, but they were more likely to invite crime, was sort of the government's rationale. So what they would do is they would go to the banks and they would tell the bank accounts that, hey, you guys should shut down these accounts because they're untrustworthy and more likely to commit crime. So the banks would close their accounts and they weren't allowed to tell them why. They would just shut the bank account for no reason, and this happened for about 4 years. This went from, I think, 2013 to 2017 until Trump actually stopped it in 2017 under the official rationale that this was not helping to weed down crime the way it was supposed to. The Biden administration took this, and to be fair, this was also happening under Obama and Trump, but the Biden administration really ramped it up. They created Operation Choke Point 2.0, which is not an official program. Choke Point 1.0 was an official program. Choke Point 2.0 is just a nickname given to this. But basically, the Federal Reserve, the FDIC, the CFPB, they all worked to target the bank accounts of crypto companies and AI companies behind the scenes to get them shut down. So Mark Andreessen actually brought this up on the Joe Rogan podcast. If you guys saw that, this was right after the election, that they were all targeted by, in particular, he singled out Elizabeth Warren for going after them. And I think he said 30 of his investors, he works with an investing firm, Andreessen Horowitz, 30 of his investors all had their bank accounts closed for no reason because they were related to either crypto or AI or some other tech thing. So him and a lot of other billionaires all pushed their support behind Trump, and that's a big part of why Trump probably won the election. If you see this headline here, you might have seen this 2 years ago. Elizabeth Warren is building an anti-crypto army. So she was been very vocally anti-crypto for a while. So just a few examples of mass debanking. So there's Amir Taki, who we saw in the video. He was debanked as a tech founder. He cannot open any bank account in the UK anymore. No explanation was given, just here's a check, now leave. He gets harassed all the time as well. And these are all responses, I should mention, that were posted directly after the Mark Andreessen appearance on Joe Rogan, confirming what Mark Andreessen had said. Because, a lot of people more on the left were like, it's all nonsense. There was legitimate reasons. This is Brian Armstrong in the top left here. He is the CEO of Coinbase, which is one of the biggest crypto companies in the world. He said, can confirm this is true. It was one of the most unethical and un-American things that happened in the Biden administration. And my guess is we'll find Elizabeth Warren's fingerprints all over it. Biden himself was probably unaware. We're still collecting documents via FOIA requests, so hopefully the full story emerges of who was involved and whether they broke any laws. So they're still kind of dealing with that. Caitlin Long, she's trying to start a fully backed bank, and she's been shut down multiple times. So she says yes to bank multiple times for many of us, even though most of us did nothing to precipitate it. It was coordinated by the Biden-Warren crew. It was vicious and it was universal. And then Jeremy Kauffman, who some of you might know, he was a prominent feature in the Libertarian Party, but he says, in March of 2020, my company's bank accounts and my personal bank account were all closed simultaneously without warning and without any accusation of policy violations. These are just a few other names. Some of these we've already mentioned. Eric Voorhees, Sam Altman actually got debanked, of OpenAI. Melania and Barron Trump, they got taken down. Kanye West, you guys probably heard about that one. But again, some of these are really prominent people. Nigel Farage, very prominent politician in England. John Pollard is actually local. He's one of the co-founders of ETH Denver. He got debanked. Jeff Berwick, Cody Wilson, Dinesh D'Souza, all these people were debanked. Jesse Powell is the CEO of Kraken, or the former CEO. Now, this is such an interesting phenomenon because it almost exclusively attacks people not on the left, either conservatives or libertarians. So most Democrats don't even know this is happening or what it means. So I have a clip here. Oh, hopefully it's going to, there we go. This is SNL mocking Donald Trump for mentioning debanking.
Trump did have a slight stumble this week while talking about banks, and he introduced an interesting new term called debank.
We're also going to place strong protections to stop banks and regulators from trying to debank you. They want to debank you, and we're going to debank.
I don't know what the hell debank means, but he might have to take de-ambulance to see the doctor.
So I just think that's interesting that the different worldviews we live in, that everyone on the left thinks you're a crazy person. Well, what are you there was some legitimate reason why this happened, right? It's not some conspiracy out to get you, when that's actually kind of what it is. Yeah. Trust NPR for all your things. So that leads us to the Tornado Cash takedown. So Tornado Cash is a similar project to Samourai Wallet that was taken down before Samourai Wallet. So Tornado Cash was a smart contract-based coin join for Ethereum and all ERC20 tokens. So that means everything on the Ethereum network, which includes a whole bunch of other projects that are built on top of it, all benefited from this privacy. So this launched for about a year, and then due to the nature of the smart contract, they were able to change the code to make it immutable, meaning they no longer have control over it. So the contract exists forever so long as Ethereum exists, which was a ballsy move, right? But that's like the whole point of what Ethereum and Bitcoin's supposed to be, is decentralized. So they went ahead and actually did that. And they also they went out of their way to try to be compliant. So unlike Samourai, they didn't use provocative language. They didn't talk about things like money laundering. I mean, they did a little bit, but not nearly as much. They were much more compliant in that way. And then they actually proactively blocked any members on the OFAC list with they built a GUI front end. So the smart contract is on Ethereum and anybody can interact with it, but it's difficult. You have to be kind of a little technical know-how. The GUI, which is basically just a website, is what a GUI means. You can go to that and you can actually use their thing and it walks you through it and it's much simpler. But if you were on the OFAC list, which is the government sanctions list, you can't use it. So like certain countries you were banned from due to the OFAC list. So they tried to be compliant, even though the government never tried to push this on them. They proactively tried to do this to be compliant. Didn't matter. 2022, they were raided by the FBI at the behest of the Southern District of New York, which, by the way, is the same district that went after Ross Ulbricht and also went after Donald Trump several times. So a little bit more about Tornado Cash. That is Roman Storm in the top right. He's kind of the one who's gotten the most attention. So I'm just going to kind of read you. This is directly from the indictment. Roman Storm and Roman Semenov are each charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering and 1 count of conspiracy to violate the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, which each carry a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. They are also each charged with conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitting business, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. This is also the legal definition of being a money transmitter. In order to be a money transmitter, a party must have necessary and sufficient control over the value being transmitted. So as we talked about earlier with Whirlpool, Tornado Cash is the same thing. They never had control of the money. When you put your Ethereum in, it's your own Ethereum that you get back. And so it's almost like a rhetorical trick in a way, right? Because does it really matter if I get 1 Ethereum that's yours or 1 Ethereum that's mine? Does that really matter? Well, in a legal sense, yes, it does. Because as long as it's your money, you're not getting other people's money. It's not technically money laundering in the same sense because it's necessary and sufficient control. No one but you has it. That's how it works. And then this is a little quote from Roman Storm. This is June 13th of last year. I'm Roman Storm. I poured my soul into Tornado Cash, software that's non-custodial, trustless, permissionless, immutable, unstoppable. In 31 days, I faced trial. The DOJ wants to bury DeFi, saying I should have controlled it, added KYC, know your customer, is what KYC stands for, never built it. SDNY is trying to crush me, blocking every expert witness. If I lose, DeFi dies with me. The dream of financial freedom, the code I believed in, it all fades into darkness. I'm fighting, but the weight is unbearable. This isn't just my end, it's ours. So that's still his pinned tweet. So there's 3 primary developers. Alex Pertsev, who was convicted of money laundering in the Netherlands, and he got 64 months in jail. He's actually temporarily released to continue fighting his trial. I'm not sure of the details there, but he was not charged by the American government. He was charged in another country. Roman Storm was found guilty of unlicensed money transmitting, and then the jury was actually deadlocked on money laundering and the sanctions violations. So right now he is awaiting sentencing, probably going to get the maximum, which is 5 years, but he is still appealing and trying to fight back. And he didn't lose on the other 2 cases, so that's at least some silver lining. And also the courts actually struck down the sanctions. So the sanctions that they had put on Tornado Cash, those have been struck down as being too aggressive. Doesn't really matter because the other charges are still there. And then Roman Semenov, the 3rd developer, no one knows where he is. He's presumed to be in Russia and he has not been arrested. So he should probably stay in Russia because they probably will snatch him if he leaves Russia or wherever else he is. Okay, so now that gets us back to Samourai. So this is the FinCEN letter. This is January 2024. Well, actually just a few months before that. FinCEN passed new guidance basically making CoinJoin, in effect, impossible. So what they were going to do is that any company that participated in the Bitcoin space would have to check every single transaction, and if any one looked like it was a CoinJoin transaction, they would have to report it to FinCEN. That was what they were trying to do, and that was passed. That was the new guidance. It hadn't gone into effect yet. So this would destroy Samourai Wallet's business model. So they got together with a bunch of other Bitcoin companies, and they were funded by 1031. So if you see in the bottom right there, all these companies, those are all Bitcoin companies that all signed on to this letter. 1031 funded it, and they wrote this letter basically telling FinCEN, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to quote from it. This is a direct quote. Employing these techniques to safeguard valuable digital assets is as routine and mundane and free of illicit purpose as using 2-factor authentication to secure a digital wallet. Covered financial institutions should not have to become de facto law enforcement officers to make investigations easier for FinCEN. And then on the bottom left, that was January 23, or January 23rd, 2024, just them talking about the letter they submitted to FinCEN. And naturally, 3 months later, they were raided by the FBI. So, and again, they were trying to be proactive. They're trying to work with the government. They never got any communication from anyone in the government. No cease and desist, no warnings, nothing. They were just raided 3 months later. So both of the Samourai devs were raided at gunpoint. Keone, in particular, lived in a small suburb in, I think it was Pennsylvania. So he wakes up at 5 in the morning, and there's 50 FBI agents outside on the street. So with a giant horn that started blaring, saying, Keone Rodriguez, come out with your hands up. So him and his wife come out, laser sights on their chest, 50 FBI agents. The only question they asked him is, do you have guns in the house? He told them, yes, I have guns. They're in the house. They're like, okay. They handcuff both him and his wife. His wife is taken off. He's put in the back of a van. He's not told anything else. He doesn't even know why it's happening. They then flew drones through his house to make sure that there wasn't someone violent who was going to shoot the FBI agents or something like that. So Keone was eventually released and told that this was about Samourai Wallet, essentially. At the same time, his partner, William Lonergan Hill, known publicly on the internet as T-Dev, was arrested in Portugal. So it doesn't matter where you go. The New York feds will find you. And he was thrown into a jail over there. Now, Keone was let out the same day, and William Hill was in prison, I think, for about a month, in a prison with notoriously poor conditions as a 67-year-old man. So this created a chilling effect in the industry. Multiple companies pulled out of the U.S. as a result. So within about the next week or so, Wasabi Wallet, one of the other privacy competitors, they started blocking all American customers. You could not use Wasabi Wallet as an American customer. Now, this is trivially easy to get around, but still, it's kind of a dark precedent. Phoenix Wallet, which is a Lightning wallet, is considered to be the top Lightning wallet by a lot of people. They specifically announced that they were pulling out. So that's their tweet there on May 3rd. Phoenix Wallet will be removed from U.S. app stores because basically, you can't do business in the U.S. because the government's just so insane. And then also Local Monero ended up shutting down right after that. They never said whether or not it was specifically because of this, but it seemed kind of coincidental. And Local Monero was a place where you could meet people in person to buy Monero for cash. So after the arrest, basically they shut up. They're working on everything behind the scenes, and they say nothing publicly, which is very prudent to do. Don't talk publicly about your case. So in that time, a new project was spun up called Ashigaru Wallet. So it's September 2025. A group of anonymous developers took the code of the Samourai Wallet, which is 100% open source. And so what that means is anybody can use this code. You can fork it. So you can take the code, pivot it, and then do whatever you want with it. That's effectively what open source means. So they took the code of Samourai Wallet and built a new wallet called Ashigaru Wallet. And for those of you who don't know what an Ashigaru means, is Ashigaru were assistants to samurai, essentially. So in feudal Japan, they were the men with guns. They were the peasants who would come out to assist the samurai when they needed help. So it's actually a great name. And that's their little logo there, similar to the Samurai logo. So the devs are completely anonymous. Nobody knows who they are. To my knowledge, they've done one interview on the Ungovernable Misfits podcast with a voice modulator. They have no social media presence. So if you see a Ashigaru page, it's not them. It's someone else. There's a few of them. And then they run pretty much everything over Tor except for their main website, which is actually now a Serbian domain. So it's .I think RS or SN which in Serbia, which is probably not super likely to hand over information to the U.S. government, is the assumption. So now that website was launched. It does take a little bit of trust to use this anonymous developed website, this anonymous thing with your Bitcoin, this wallet. So it took them a little while to kind of build up trust within the community. And then in June 2025, they launched Whirlpool, which is the privacy feature, the primary thing that Samourai Wallet was known for. So this is Econo Alchemist announcing it. So basically their social media is other people announcing it for them. Whirlpool is back. The Ashigaru devs have implemented Samourai Wallet's zero-link CoinJoin protocol and a new coordinator. So this is a really ballsy move because while it's not officially illegal, it was in effect illegal that they threw these people in jail. And then this is a website you can go to, whirlpoolstats.xyz, and you can actually see how much is in there. It's 102 Bitcoin are in Ashigaru Wallet right now. That is up 22 Bitcoin from when I looked 4 days ago, which is kind of wild, actually. Now, that's actually really small compared to what the Samourai Wallet pool was. Samourai peaked at somewhere over 10,000 Bitcoin, which is about $10 billion that was in there at one point. So the primary purpose of that is to say that before we even get to trial, all of the government's work has basically been voided, which I love. So the wallet is up and running. You can go use it right now, Ashigaru. It's pretty much an exact copy with a little bit added on, and it's now more private than even Samourai was. So that leads us to the legal effort. Keone and Bill stay quiet. They were working behind the scenes. They were charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering and unlicensed money transmission, just like the Tornado devs. They used the same lawyer and kept their primary focus on refuting the charges, again, working quietly behind the scene. So now, when they actually talked to Keone and the feds were justifying criminality, one of the key things that they looked at was his tweets. So they said, your tweets are evidence of your criminal wrongdoing, essentially. So this one on the top left, where he says, welcome new Russian oligarch Samourai Wallet users. That is considered as an invitation for Russian oligarchs to launder money. That's their evidence that they used. Now, again, we have no idea if Russian oligarchs did launder money or if they used the service. We have no idea because that's how the service works, is you don't actually know who uses it. As Keone tried to point out, that is what they call on the internet a shitpost. All of these other ones are similar shitposts that he made, and these are all in response to specific events that happen. So welcome new Canadian users, and this is in response to people getting essentially debanked during the truckers' protests. Welcome new Fed employee users. U.S. Federal Reserve bans employees from trading Bitcoin. So he posted, welcome new Fed employee users. You know, this is a branding thing. This is kind of a joke trying to point out that privacy is for everyone. Everyone needs privacy. Welcome new EU Samurai. Welcome new Japanese users. Same thing, all in response to big public events. But again, this was seen as official evidence. This was more official evidence. The defendants knew that it was a haven for criminals to engage in large-scale money laundering and sanctions evasion. Indeed, as the defendants intended and well knew, a substantial portion of the funds that Samourai possessed were criminal proceeds passed through Samourai for purposes of concealment. So that was what they officially said. I don't know if you guys see this graph there, but the gray area is the money believed to be from illicit funds, which is actually quite small. It's maybe 5 to 10%. And that comes from a firm specifically looking for this. So we don't even know exactly how accurate that number is. Now, this tweet is from Lauren, Keone's wife, and she kind of points out that none of this even matters. They'll get you no matter what. So a lot of people talk about Keone's tweets. She makes the comparison to Roman, Roman, that he didn't do any of that. He wasn't taking a fee the way that they were, although they kind of were. They had a finance model. But he didn't have this like blatant talk that was super aggressive. Didn't matter. They went after him. They found reasons to charge Roman Storm. Further, the DOJ alleges that because Samourai did not provide any KYC or AML as a financial institution, that means that every dollar or Bitcoin that went through their system was considered unlawful. So that includes $2 billion in transactions. So some of that illicit money could be included in that $2 billion. It's just all illicit, even though they don't even know what it actually did, just because it went through Samourai Wallet. Now, the official number that they claim was illicit was $100 million. They provided no proof of this. There's no victims. No one has claimed anything. They just asserted this number, and that's it. And then also the government demands restitution for the $100 million of illicit funds to be paid to them, of course, because they were the ones who were defrauded for whatever reason. So more on the legal effort. So after about a year where they're going through trial, they find out there's an example of a Brady violation. So if you guys don't know, a Brady violation just means where the prosecutors don't give you evidence that is exculpatory or evidence that could clear you, that could prove your innocence. So this was specifically denied to the team. And that evidence was that the DOJ had reached out to FinCEN and they specifically asked, is Samourai a money transmitter? And FinCEN said, no, they're not. Under our legal definition, they are not a money transmitter. DOJ basically said, we don't give a shit, number one, and we're not going to tell Samourai about that. So to Samourai, they're like, oh, this is great. This is a Brady violation. We have a really good legal case. And so to kind of elaborate on that, this is a CoinJoin versus Mixer. So this is the legal definition. So a mixer is illegal and a CoinJoin is not. The difference here is a mixer is an anonymizing service. So you see on the top here, anonymizing services. So you send your Bitcoin to money and this person or company mixes your Bitcoin to make it private. That's illegal. But right down here, an anonymizing software provider is not a money transmitter. That's what they are, software. And it's pretty blatant. An anonymizing software provider is not a money transmitter. It doesn't get much clearer than that. And now some of these mixers have been taken down. So Bitcoin Fog was an example of a mixer, is the most prominent one. There's been a bunch of other ones. There's been Ethereum mixers as well that were all taken down, but Bitcoin Fog is the most prominent one. And so that's the legal distinction that was provided. And this documentation originally came out in 2013. This is specifically from the FinCEN 2019 website, specifically saying it's legal. So they wrote basically a legal letter to dismiss the indictment using the Brady violation. They found multiple examples of case law throughout history, basically based off the principle that, and this is for money laundering, just because a party knows about a potential conspiracy does not make them liable. You have to actually participate in the conspiracy, whereas just saying something and then other people money laundering, you know that it's possible, is not sufficient proof. So they put together this whole legal case based off all this precedent, Supreme Court cases, and then they decided to take it before the judge. So 2 days before they actually go to the judge was swapped out to a judge known as Denise Cote, who was known for being extremely harsh on sentencing and on ruling. So they bring their case before the judge, and before they present a single thing, the judge says to them, I've read all your motions, they're all denied. No reason given, nothing to talk about, end of story. So at that point, both Keone and William Lonergan realized, we're screwed. There's no way we'll get a fair chance, a fair trial. We need a plea bargain. So luckily, this happened right before the Tornado Cash verdict. So Tornado Cash was actually going to court, and this was like right in the same week. So the prosecutors gave them a plea bargain. They got rid of the money laundering charges, which were 20 years, and said, okay, just take the money transmitter charges, which are 5 years, and pay restitution. And they agreed. So Keone and Bill decided to plead guilty without any hope for a fair trial. The DOJ dropped the money laundering charges. Keone he also noted in several interviews that he was, by this point, so this would have been September 2025, he was $2.4 million in legal debt by this point. All of his money was not allowed to be used. He was not allowed to continue working. $2.4 million just in legal fees, and they hadn't even gone to trial. So had he gone to trial, it's possible that number could have doubled. Who knows? So Keone also talked about this, that he took the pardon, and they were really adamant that they were going to fight this. They did nothing wrong. They were going to fight it. That was the public persona. That's who his persona had been online. He felt a lot of regret after pleading guilty. So there's like a month or so before they actually sentence you, right? So you have to go to the sentencing board. And so he talked about after he got sentenced, this was a quote he said, "Boy, was I glad I took the deal, because this judge was spitting venom at me. Man, she hated my guts. It was wild in sentencing because I truly feel that if she was able to put me away for life, she would have. I know that had I gone to trial and got convicted, she would have given all 25 of those years without question." So Keone was given 5 years in prison. Both men were fined $250,000. That fine accrues interest, by the way. So the moment they go into prison, it starts accruing interest. William was only given 4 years in prison, presumably because he's much older. He's 30 years older, but no reason was ever really given. And then both men, as part of the plea deal, had to give up 57.55 Bitcoin, worth over $6 million at the time. And again, that money could not be used for their defense. So they had to borrow a whole bunch of money, while legally their money was effectively frozen. But one silver lining is that their money was not seized by the feds, so they had it as a bargaining chip. So that is the point, that having good OPSEC protect your Bitcoin well, at least you have the bargaining chip. Again, it's small, but it's a silver lining. So Keone reported to prison on December 19th, and Hill reported on January 4th. And then, of course, this is Oprah. Everyone's a money transmitter. And this is not the first time. This has hit a lot of other people. There's another actually prominent case back in 2004. eGold, which was a centralized service, they were doing basically gold-backed money, and they were arrested out of the blue and charged with money transmitting, which they didn't know was a thing because this was 2004 and money transmitting was part of the Patriot Act 3 years before. And they had actually reached out to the IRS. It was like, hey, we want to do everything we can do to be compliant. Let us know. IRS never responded, just raided them. And then they were convicted on the promise that, you pay some fines and then you guys can apply for a money transmitter license and everything's good. They were then, of course, denied for the money transmitter license because they were felons. So that's a famous case, and that was back in 2004. So this kind of thing has been happening a lot. And then in the middle here, this is the case of Binance. So Binance admits it engaged in anti-money laundering, unlicensed money transmitting, sanctions violations, and the largest corporate resolution to include criminal charges for an executive. But the CEO of Binance, CZ, happened to make a massive donation to one Donald Trump, and he has been pardoned. So he did 4 months in jail, but he got out. And obviously their money transmitting and or money laundering was a much larger number because they were, I believe, the biggest company in crypto at the time. Still unjust, but it just kind of points it out. So that's Keone in the middle there. They celebrated their Christmas early because he had to go to prison on December 19th. And then this is just a very sad video of Keone walking into prison. That's all it is. His wife is filming it. He put on his own pair of sweats, hoping that they would let him wear his own sweats in prison, and of course they did not. They threw him away and made him wear his prison outfit. So we're on the campaign for a pardon. So before Keone went to prison, he went on every podcast he could. He's probably on like 20, 30 podcasts in the case of 2 weeks. He's telling his story, telling everybody what happened, and was not charitable to the people who had done this to him, naturally, now that he was essentially free to speak. Econo Alchemist is a Bitcoin influencer. He's been pushing this really hard, trying to get people to sign the signatures on their pledge. And they're basically trying to go hard at Trump to get Trump to give him a pardon so that they don't have to spend the whole 5 years in there. And then this is a quote from Keone. This is from his personal Twitter now. He says, "Your continued noise is working. Thank you to everyone pushing real Donald Trump to pardon Bill and me. Let's get this over the line." So that brings us to the Blanche memo. So the Blanche memo was May 2025. U.S. Attorney Todd Blanche released a memo specifically requiring the DOJ to end regulation by prosecution. So that's what a lot of people saw that they were doing. That's why a lot of people actually voted for Donald Trump. He promised to pardon Ross, which he did, and he promised to end the war on crypto. Now, while that has happened, and that is a good thing, there's an executive order, 14157, that aims for total elimination of terrorist financing, human trafficking, and cartel activity, which in effect means privacy. So the Trump administration is not big on privacy. So they're sort of weaving this line like, hey, we love Bitcoin, but as long as it's not private, as long as we can monitor it, they're trying to co-opt it. And another interesting fact is that EO 14233 is the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve executive order, which specifically mandates that any Bitcoin that is seized by the US government needs to go to the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. Well, the DOJ violated that with Samurai's Bitcoin. They sold it immediately. So they're actually kind of trying to use this as a pivot point to be like, hey, Trump, these guys told you to fuck off. Come pardon us as a fuck you to them. Like, that's kind of the angle they're going for. So again, this is a possible pardon. This is more language on the anti-privacy bill of the Trump administration. And then this is somebody asking Trump about pardoning Keone.
A man named Keone Rodriguez is going to federal prison for creating crypto privacy software. The case was started under the Biden administration, but your DOJ kept it going and secured the conviction. A lot of people in crypto are saying that this man should be pardoned. Are you familiar with the case at all, or would you be interested
I've
in
heard
looking
about
at
it. I'll look at it. Why, you think he should be pardoned? Sounds like it. Sounds like, based on your question.
Many people in
Rodriguez, we'll look at that, Pam. Okay, let's take a look at it. You know, you'll have to tell me. I don't know anything about it, but we'll take a look.
Classic Trump. That was, I think, December 16th. So we've heard no updates since then. So we're going to branch out a little bit and just talk about the overall war on privacy. Digital IDs are being pushed across the world. Third-party doctrine and cloud data is everywhere. So if you guys don't know what third-party doctrine means, is that legally in the US, if your data is in any sort of cloud platform, you legally are not the owner. So your Gmail, you don't own it. Gmail owns your email. Your camera footage for Ring, Amazon owns that. They can hand it over to the cops. They don't need a warrant. That's what third-party doctrine means. That could eventually apply to Bitcoin. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't, but cloud Bitcoin, if your Bitcoin's on Coinbase, and effectively they own it because they can just take it and there's nothing you can do about it. But legally speaking, that could change at some point. So own your data as much as possible. I know it's a lot of work, but try to own your own data. CDBCs are actively being developed in almost every country. Central bank digital currency. This is a highly centralized currency where the government will be able to control every aspect of it. This picture here is a graph of every country working on a CDBC. So as you can see there, 49 are in pilots, 20 in development, 36 in research, 21 inactive, and 2 canceled. So luckily the Nigeria one, which was launched, failed massively, and they just scrapped it. So this tweet here, which was funny because I found one that Samourai Wallet said, welcome new Nigerian government Samurai users. And their tweet specifically says, as far as we're concerned, Nigeria will become a full non-cash economy by March 1st, 2023. As a consequence, any government official that withdraws even 1 Naira cash from any public account from March 1st will be investigated and prosecuted. So like pretty intense, but you know, they scrapped it. And then this little gif here. Digital ID has the potential to transform our daily lives for the better, right? And you know, if you've seen that meme. So again, World War Privacy, UK Online Safety Act. I don't know if you guys have followed this at all, but this will track every user on the internet. For the children, of course. This is all to protect the children. So this is being pushed hard in the UK. This went through in June. So every user has to sign up for their app. Surveillance cameras are all over the world. They're increasing dramatically. So Flock is a private company. There's been big protests here in Denver against Flock. And then ULEZ in the UK, which is based off carbon emissions, where they track you based off your license plate and they charge you money. And one of the silver linings is that in the UK, there's a group called the Blade Runners that are physically cutting down these cameras over and over and over again. It's really cool to see. They're all anonymous. The government spent millions of dollars on the amount of cameras that random Brits anonymously have destroyed. And so the free speech issue in the UK is really bad. So this is one stat. So in 2023, the UK arrested 12,183 citizens for speech. In Russia, they arrested 400 for speech. Russia has double the population of the UK, by the way. And that number presumably has only gone up. I don't know if you guys saw, there was a video maybe 3 months ago where there was a guy at a protest and he yelled, "I like bacon," and they arrested him because that was inflammatory to Muslims. It's really bad over there. And then this is a fun little video from the UK. This is the UK Minister of Technology talking about VPNs, which I promise you they want to ban, but they have not yet done so.
Well, I certainly accept that there has been a rise in use and download of VPNs, but they've not released the overall numbers. They've just said the percentage increase. What we do know for a fact is that Yoti, the leading age verification app, has now had 6.5 million downloads in Britain. It's been number 1 in the app download charts for 2 days running and is still in the top 5 today. So we know that the vast majority of people who are turning to internet solutions in order to adhere to the age verification requirements that we now have when you're accessing certain materials and social media online, most Britons have been actually adapting to it in a really functional and appropriate way. So just to be really clear about this is the biggest step forward in child safety since the internet was created. There is, since Friday last week, children and parents will notice the difference in the experience that children have. Most children do not go looking for harmful and dangerous and pornographic content. Most children actually have found that the content has come to find them. That's why we've acted so decisively in this. And for everybody who's out there thinking of using VPNs, let me just say to you directly, verifying your age keeps a child safe, keeps children safe in our country. So let's just not try and find a way around. Just prove your age.
So yeah, that's about it. So the government needs to track you for the children, which is quite literally what he's saying. And of course, that's absurd. But small silver lining. So immediately after this act went through, minutes after it, Proton VPN signups originating in the UK surged by more than 1,400%. Windscribe VPN reported a 250% increase, NordVPN a 1,000% increase. And who knows what the rest of the VPN companies were. So a lot of people in Britain are not happy about this. There's a lot of protests happening. Probably not enough, but it is happening. Some other mild silver linings, Zcash, which is another cool privacy project, has seen massive pumps. People are bullish on privacy again. BTC privacy is thriving again. Open source software is thriving. We have more and better tools than we've ever had before. So there's a lot of cool things that are happening despite this dystopian crackdown happening around us. And then this is a post from Ross Ulbricht, who's been a big champion of Keone and the Samourai devs, talking about freeing them. And he did a Twitter Spaces with Keone and talked about the importance of the petitions and signing them and how that matters. Politicians like to see numbers. If you can show them 1 million people support this, they might actually listen. So this is a quote from Keone. This is an interview he did as a small silver lining. So I just wanted to show you guys this real quick before we end.
Absolutely. I mean, that was my heyday on the internet. So I remember those days very well. Pirate Bay would get seized. And then suddenly within 20 minutes, there's a new Pirate Bay URL and nothing was stopped. Pirate Bay still exists today, so that's exactly what it is. So they took us down. They were successful at it, right? We had maybe 4 months left of development time to fully decentralizing Whirlpool. So had they waited just a few months before raiding us, it would have been a kind of a different story. But that being said, it wasn't long before our open source code, which was out there in the wild, was forked by what seems to be a very competent team who learned that even if you think you're following the law, even if the regulator says you're following the law, that's not enough of an assurance. So we have to go underground, right? We have to not have a domain. We have to not have social media. We need to go only Tor hidden service, and it's sad that that's the case. Right? Why shouldn't they be able to have a domain and social media and a Telegram? But they learned from our case that the Department of Justice won't follow the law. They'll make up the law and they will go after you if that's what they want to do. So Ashigaru figured that out, and now they're more resilient than Samourai was. They are, Tor hidden service only, and they're able to leverage all the decades worth of code that we created and build on it. And that's a beautiful thing. That's the whole point of open source. So and they released Whirlpool. That's unbelievable, unbelievably brave. And I saw that happen, and I was just so happy to see, stuff that we built, poured our heart into over a decade, still live on.
So yeah, I just want to play that because, it's kind of pessimistic. So it's cool to see Keone actually happy about this. That I really wanted to hear what his thoughts were on Ashigaru. Just because that was such a cool thing, a cool development in an otherwise dark situation. So anyways, that is the talk. The way forward, billingkeone.org, go sign the petition. Takes you 10 seconds. It's just a signature. It's not a big thing, but you can do a little bit with that. If you would like to donate, Give, Send, Go, Bill and Keone. They are now able to take Bitcoin. They were barred from using Bitcoin, by the way, up until they went to jail. So now you can donate in Bitcoin, but it was through Give, Send, Go because they were not allowed to up until they went to prison. So that is the talk. Thank you.
All right. Who has questions? Any questions? I'll take the first one. Josh, can you just briefly touch on why, philosophically, is what they did such a threat to the federal government, to the authoritarian political class?
Yeah. So that was basically always the promise of Bitcoin, right? That Bitcoin is this money that the state can't control. That's the beauty of it. You can send, if you have $1 billion in Bitcoin, you can send that to anyone, anywhere in the world at any time. That was always the promise of Bitcoin. And the government realized that early on, but they recognized that they couldn't stop it directly. There's no way to shut down Bitcoin other than to confiscate every single copy of the blockchain node, which is basically impossible. And they recognized that. So instead, what they realized, though, is that if you control the entry points and the exit points of Bitcoin, everyone who goes into Bitcoin and then comes out of Bitcoin, effectively, it doesn't really matter. That they know who you are, they can trace your Bitcoin. And in a lot of ways, Bitcoin's actually worse because Bitcoin privacy is significantly worse by default than using bank privacy. You know, like your Zelle transaction or Venmo. Well, I think Venmo is public, but PayPal, like no one can see that. If I send $1,000 to PayPal, nobody can view that. The company knows, but it's not public. Whereas Bitcoin, it is public. If I send $1 million to Trump or whoever, anybody can trace that and they can look at the transaction. Now, they don't know it's me, but once they figure out that it's me, there's entire firms that can trace it. And then you, just as a regular person, you can follow that anywhere. So a lot of people realize that while Bitcoin was this amazing invention, privacy was really needed to really take it to the next step. Because if it's just co-opted, what's the point? And so that's why I like something like Monero. But that's also why Bitcoin privacy is so important, is in order for it to be what it was always supposed to be, it needs some level of privacy.
Isn't Monero the same problem? I mean, the on-ramp and off-ramp for Monero is recorded, right? I mean, they know it.
Sort of. So Monero's actually been blacklisted from almost every major exchange. So you can't buy Monero on Coinbase. But Monero is so private that it almost doesn't matter, right? They will know that you bought Monero, but that's pretty much it. Like there's ways to trace it, but it's really hard. And then they have some new developments coming through that will make it even more private. So let's say I go onto not Coinbase because Coinbase doesn't sell it. I think Binance doesn't either. You have to go onto a small exchange for Monero. Let's say I buy $1,000 in Monero and then I take it out. They know it was me who bought it, but that's it. It's very difficult for them to trace the Monero past that. If I send it to you or some dissidents in another country, they really don't know. They'd have to watch me very closely to actually be able to find that out. And they would only know that if I go through an exchange. If I were to go and buy Monero from a person, you know, if I bought $1,000 in Monero from JD, they have no idea. And then they can't trace it after that. So Monero is significantly more private. So is something like Zcash. Zcash has optional privacy, but you get a lot of benefits from something like that as well. So it's not the same, but yes, if you buy Monero from a centralized entity where your name's attached, then yes, you do have the same problem, but they can't trace it every step of the way how they can with Bitcoin.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, kind of piggyback off of that. With Monero, you would want to trade it for either cash or goods and services directly. Yeah, I'm just kind of like thinking about like how do you work with Bitcoin in a way that's private and secure. Are the I forget what was called wallet. Good for it because hey, if you're on this wallet, are you now kind of getting targeted potentially versus if you're just self-custodying it or you're using the big exchanges, you kind of give up your privacy, and then how do you really use it in practice? So that's the challenge that I have.
So what's your question exactly?
Yeah, sorry, lost the question. Is just like, hey, how do you, if you're interested in this stuff, how do you use it in a way that's private and secure and to, use it, profit from it effectively? Sure.
So I'd say profit from it is kind of a separate question. In terms of actual use, my answer is use Monero. Monero is much easier. Now, that's difficult, right? It's a little bit technical. A lot of places don't take Monero. There are a few different credit card services where you can use Monero to fund it and then pay for things that way and not attach your name to it. So you gain some of the privacy from Monero that way. Anyone who takes Monero directly, obviously, use it that way. what you can also do is basically send your Monero through Bitcoin. So there's a lot of KYC-free, non-custodial money platforms. So I send my Monero to them, and then they'll forward Bitcoin to someone else for me. So that's another way that you can do it. So if they take Bitcoin, they effectively take any other cryptocurrency. So I start with Monero. So it comes from me, it's Monero. And then the company, what they see is they just see Bitcoin came from an exchange. So they know someone paid, but they have no idea who I am. They could then go to that exchange. The exchange asks who I am, and they might be able to trace who I am based off my IP address. But if I paid Monero, they don't know who I am. They can't trace that. So they're like, well, maybe we can do a deep investigation of you based off your IP address, and that's a whole other privacy thing. But basically, the answer is use Monero. But if you want to use Bitcoin more privately, there are tools for that. Ashigaru is a good tool. They have some other privacy things that I didn't really talk about. There was Ricochet, was a privacy transaction, which I'm not 100% sure if Ashigaru has that. Gives you a little bit more privacy. Basically, you would send your Bitcoin through multiple hops. It would do that automatically for you, so it'd send it through like 8 wallets. It's not much, but it's a little bit of extra privacy. So there are things you can do like that with Bitcoin directly as well. But my real answer would be Monero.
Let me be a devil advocate for some time. So it's still possible to use privacy for conducting crime, like selling drugs, child porn, weapons, especially weapons of mass destruction and everything like that. So, and it's obviously possible to use private Bitcoins to do this kind of deals. How can you, what is your strategy to not deny, maybe to say why we still need privacy, how we going to conduct this crime, or we are not going to conduct this crime, this kind of crimes? What is your opinion?
So I'm not fully understanding your question.
So, okay, it's possible to...
Why do we need privacy when people use privacy to commit crimes?
Kind of.
I mean, privacy by default is not a criminal action, right? When you go to the bathroom, you close your door, right? You buy blinds, envelopes cover a message. All of these things are basic private necessities that we've always used, and that's important, right? Privacy doesn't just go away once we get to digital. The reason that they hate it so much is because it's so amplified, right? Is that your message is so much bigger on Twitter than it is in person. Bitcoin, you can pay anyone in the world. Whereas, with cash, it was limited. The threat was always limited, and that's why it matters. But privacy has always mattered and will always matter, I think. I mean, we could argue that maybe we'll get to an AI world where we're all hyperlinked and we can all read each other's thoughts. Maybe that'll happen, and there is no privacy anymore, and that's just the world, but...
Maybe if what Artem might be saying is, what about the actual criminals, though? The ones who are engaging in child trafficking. Shouldn't there be some sort of tool to go after them, I suppose?
Is that your question? Yeah. Okay. I mean, there are tools to go after them, number one. But two, what happened to good old-fashioned police work? Shouldn't police have to investigate? Aren't we presumed innocent? I mean, let's be honest, we're not presumed innocent. That is the reality of the world we live in, especially for any of these things. You are presumed guilty. That is why Luigi Mangione, he's presumed innocent, right? They blasted his name all over on TV. Everyone thinks he murdered someone, and maybe he did, I don't know. But that man is not presumed innocent by any means. No one who is public is presumed innocent. And that is what it always was supposed to be, and that's what it should be, is that cops actually have to investigate you, not just that they surveil you all the time for everything. And that also doesn't work because they get the wrong people all the time. They are always going after the wrong people, even when they have all this surveillance. Like we're at unprecedented levels of surveillance right now, and when they raid people's houses, they get the wrong house all the time. It happens all the time. They also shoot your dog while they're at it. But these tools exist. Law enforcement is everywhere. There's companies that cater to this. Chainalysis is a company that tracks your Bitcoin. They're kind of hated in the Bitcoin space because their whole thing is to report to governments, to report you to governments, and to trace your actions. So all these tools exist. There's all sorts of ways to go after people, and they get these criminals. It's difficult, but they do catch them. And maybe they should focus their efforts on actually going after real criminals. They don't even go after the criminals they know about. I don't know if you've seen this whole story in Minnesota recently. Billions of dollars of fraud. They don't give a shit, So they're busy targeting software developers when the crime over there is right in the open. So they don't really give a shit. It's not a real argument. It should be, but it's not in the current world.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the woman in Minnesota that got killed this morning.
Oh, that. Let's not get into that.
We could, not a question so much, but Apple TV is seems like it's going to be doing Neuromancer as a show. So that's where the term cyberpunk came from. So
cyberpunk, but not cypherpunk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but Neuromancer was actually a big influence on Tim May, who was the founder of the cypherpunks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyway.
Cool. I didn't know that. I'll check it out.
The rate at which the cryptos are going up, particularly Bitcoin, because it's considered the gold of crypto, and the amount of value that's being placed on it as far as dollars go. The people that were 15 years ago didn't think it would be worth squat. Now it's worth whatever 100, 120, whatever it fluctuates between.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a good chance that it will rapidly decrease in the perceived value that it has, which is all it really is all about, is the perceived value, because at every point that they're like, oh, it's going to be this powerful tool that you can use to move money around the world, or that you have privacy, that you can divide it in all these different ways, that the promise of Bitcoin being that it's decentralized and nobody can control it, and that it's like in its own way private and hidden, is turning out to be not true at all, and that it actually becomes such a greater liability to use Bitcoin because of the ledger aspect of it, and that the value that's been perceived on it up until now will begin to actually rapidly decrease, as people are like, why would you use that? You might as well just use your Visa card.
Maybe. I did believe that more in the past. But look at inflation, what's happening right now. I believe the average rent in America in the last 5 years has doubled. And that's just going to increase as they keep increasing the money supply and they keep printing it. So people have to get out of dollars, because you will get wrecked if you don't. So you only have so many options, right? Real estate, stocks, gold, or Bitcoin. Now, of those things, which one is the best performing asset in the history of the world? It's Bitcoin. It's not even close. Bitcoin is just so far away of everything else in terms of how well it's performed. Now, yes, I thought kind of the line that you were thinking back during the block size wars, and I was wrong. I thought that they were going to kill Bitcoin by killing transactions on it, by not increasing the block size. I was a big blocker at the time, and as soon as that concluded, the price of Bitcoin skyrocketed, and nobody gave a shit that you couldn't use it as easily on chain. Again, that's a little bit in the weeds, but what I've really learned looking at the entire crypto space is the fundamentals don't matter nearly as much as we think they do. Hype matters more than anything, and that's going to continue to matter. You can get anyone to invest in any sort of, as they call them, shitcoin, or any sort of scam if you just promise them riches, and Bitcoin is the best promise of riches in the history of the world. So yeah, there's going to be some trade-offs. It's not perfect, but we also have all these other tools for privacy. Zcash exists. Monero, other Bitcoin privacy tools. There's other privacy coins out there that are less known. So there's a lot of other ways to do the things we want to do that are still private. And I think privacy is becoming more of a buzzword as people are seeing what they call like wrench attacks, people getting hit over the head, and then they steal your Bitcoin. That is going to be more of a concern. People are starting to realize, like with AI, that you can impersonate anyone online. And they're starting to realize the importance of privacy. As we get more and more digital, privacy matters more and more. So.
I'm interested in your thoughts about, I'm assuming you follow the rumors more than I do about the technological improvements on Bitcoin. Do you think there's ways to make things even more secure? And
on Bitcoin?
Also, on Bitcoin, like the coin joins and mixers, they have their, they're good, but I think they could be improved probably. And I just wonder if there's improvements there. And also it made me think that, you could do a mixer with CBDCs if they ever push CBDCs. So like their CBDC is not completely immune from you being able to, mix things in.
I would disagree with that. I think if we have a CBDC, they will just simply build into the code, you're not allowed to send it to that address. No, I don't know for sure. When you were talking about Bitcoin security, I'm not 100% sure what you mean, but if you mean like more privacy on Bitcoin, there's a few things like pay joins and silent payments, I believe, that offer a little bit of privacy. But for the most part, no, you're not going to get more privacy on Bitcoin because Bitcoin is designed to be very difficult to change, and that is a good thing because we don't want to break the most powerful network for freedom in the world. So every change to Bitcoin needs to be very conservative. Of course, the downside to that is you're not going to get all these things that are good. So most of the privacy things on Monero were originally designed for Bitcoin. Some of them were created by Greg Maxwell. Satoshi talked about some of these things in some of his early writings, but they were never implemented on Bitcoin because it was just too difficult to get it done. So that's why something like Monero came along. So no, those things probably won't happen. You could look into the Lightning Network. Lightning Network is more private. It's kind of a mess in terms of like how to use it. It's difficult and custodial. I'm not the biggest fan, but you get more private with it. So no, I think the tools for Bitcoin privacy will probably need to be outside of Bitcoin. We might get a few things. There's one interesting project called Drive Chains, BIP 300, I think. If that ever goes through, that could potentially offer some more stuff, but that will probably never go through because it's too radical and goes against kind of the ethos of Bitcoin. So short answer, no.
Josh, if we asked you to start a polymarket bet on whether or not Keon and Bill would receive pardons this year, what odds would you put on that?
I don't know, 20%? I think it's kind of a 50-50 shot, right? Because Trump did pardon Ross. He does like pardoning people. Trump's this weird character. If you can manipulate him in a way, like, the Southern District of New York, they hate your guts. These guys, they hate their guts too. You guys are friends, You can kind of play Trump in that way if you play to his ego, that maybe they could get a pardon. But all of the regulation that's come out, they're not fans of privacy. It's a different thing than Ross did his 11 years in jail. Roger, he didn't get pardoned, but they struck a deal with him and they got $54 million out of it. So, that was a whole different thing. I don't know. That's the best chance they have to get out of prison early. Luckily it's only a 5-year sentence, so it's not the end of their lives like it was with Ross. I don't know if Trump will do it. He doesn't seem to give a shit. He did talk about it, so I think the whole thing is 50-50. Obviously, the sooner is less likely, but I would love to be wrong.
Perfect. So we will be back in 2 weeks. Mr. Jason Bailey in the back there is going to be talking about debt, and I guarantee you it's going to be interesting because I've talked to this guy about debt, government debt. It's going to be fascinating. Please come back in 2 weeks. It's going to be a blast, but that's our talk. Everybody give it up for Josh.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.